This week on What to Watch, Disney blockbuster vets Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt help usher in the return of the old-school adventure flick with the star-studded Jungle Cruise, and I'm all aboard.
It's not a fun vacation.
Plus, Matt Damon stars in a new thriller about a tough American father who goes to France to get his daughter back, and sadly, it's not the Born and Taken crossover I've had on my vision board for years.
You sound very American right now.
Start bidding adieu to July. It's time for What to Watch. At last, M&M's Mix, all together in one bag. Hi everyone, and welcome to Entertainment Weekly's What to Watch, the show where EW staff help you solve your viewing dilemmas. I'm your host, Gerrad Hall, and also crossing their fingers that a Gigli remake is now finally in the works. No, it's just me? All right, fine. Please welcome critic at large Leah Greenblatt, staff writer Devan Coggan, and digital news writer Lauren Huff. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Good. How are you, Gerrad?
Hello.
Great. Thank you. So nice to have all of you here. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get to it, shall we? After being dry docked for a year, Disney's Jungle Cruise set sail this weekend in theaters and on Disney Plus with premiere access. The rollicking adventure introduces Dr. Lily Houghton and the gruff riverboat captain Frank Wolf as they search for a legendary, powerful tree. Together, the crew faces greedy competition and supernatural opposition while swinging and swooping their way through the Amazon. So, Devan, please tell us, are we in for a thrill ride, or is Jungle Cruise more of a bungled snooze?
I would not call it a bungled snooze. It is super, super fun. It is just like, I am a sucker for like an old school throwback, sort of like romantic adventure comedy. You know, it's very much in the veins of, you know, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. It has a little bit of an Indiana Jones or the Mummy vibe. I wouldn't call it like a serious action film. It's definitely very playful. You know, if you've been on the Disney ride, you expect a lot of puns. There are a lot of puns in this movie, but it's really fun. And it has sort of that, it's definitely very kid-friendly, and it has that sort of rollicking adventure vibe to it, which I loved growing up, and I think people will be into it.
Emily Blunt's character, her character seems kind of uncommonly modern for the time period here, and the boat captain has a habit of just calling her Pants. So what would you say makes her more unique than, you know, what might otherwise be a less developed action character?
I mean, I think a lot of times you see, you know, you think of a traditional action, you know, the romantic lead in an action movie is sometimes the damsel in distress who needs to be saved by the rock. In this case, Emily Blunt does most of her own saving. She's a scientist, she's a botanist, she has, you know, so much expertise in her field, and she's not taken seriously by a lot of, you know, sort of her male colleagues. So she sets off into the Amazon and decides to do some discoveries herself.
Let's talk about some of these villains, because it seems like there are plenty of them. We've got Paul Giamatti with a wacky hat and a snarky pet bird. Jesse Plemons is also in the movie. And Edgar Ramirez is he's a pretty creepy mercenary, gotta say. Who do you think is most striking in this supporting cast of baddies?
I am a really big Jesse Plemons fan, and you can tell he has like been waiting for his chance to like play a Disney villain, because he's got this crazy German accent and he drives a submarine, and it's just like, you can tell that he was just like, I'm gonna ham it up.
Director Yaume Collet-Serra has helmed 3 Liam Neeson thrillers in the past. He's currently shooting next year's DC movie Black Adam, which also stars Dwayne Johnson. So do you think he's found his new muse here with The Rock?
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't be mad to see. I'm a really big fan of his. He directed. I'm a really possibly the biggest fan of the 2016 Blake Lively movie The Shallows, which is an absolute delight and is totally underrated.
Justice for Orphan, please.
Also
another great one. Yeah.
Super great. But yeah, so I'm excited to see him get to, you know, sort of play in this world of like big Disney movies and superhero movies, and you know, I'm glad The Rock is also a fan.
Leah, I've got to ask you here. We've obviously discussed here that this movie is based on the Disney ride. We've seen Disney do this before: Pirates of the Caribbean, Tomorrowland,
Country Bears.
Yeah, exactly. So why do these filmmakers keep wanting to tell these stories about these rides?
Look, how many emoji movies do we have, right?
Too many.
Like, how many Angry Birds, how many, like, there is nothing you can't make a movie out of. And I think to take it from a property that literally millions of people of all ages have physically traveled through is not the worst bet. And it's a blank slate because there is not that much of a story there. So you get to kind of color in all the lines, right? And you get to put the rock on it. So.
All right, well, we need to take a quick break, but when we get back, we'll see if Cannes darling Stillwater gets a 5-minute standing ovation at the What to Watch Festival. Stay tuned. But first, today's How I Watch is brought to you by M&M's Mix.
Hi, I'm EW's Nick Romano, and this is How I Watch. Magically! First, I go and fetch my wand from Diagon Alley to summon my favorite shows, because we can't really trust remote controls, am I right? Next, you gotta grab your headbands for comfort, and also they look really cool. And finally, conjure up some pals. Thanks for stopping by. You don't have to go home, but you can't watch here.
Welcome back. This week, Matt Damon, Camille Cotin, and Abigail Breslin are taking us on a wild ride overseas from Stillwater, Oklahoma to Marseille, France in Tom McCarthy's brand new crime drama, Stillwater. The film follows Damon as he hops the pond to try to free his daughter from prison in a wrongful murder conviction. The story is loosely inspired by the story of Amanda Knox, who was famously accused of murdering her roommate and fellow exchange student in Italy back in 2007. So Lauren, all of that said, how similar is this to the Knox case, and what kind of new perspective does the film bring to this type of story?
Well, I think that the parallels are obvious, but whenever I talked to director Tom McCarthy, the first thing he told me was that he was inspired by that story, you know, back when it happened, and he tried to create a film then, but the script, it just wasn't working for him. So he put it down, let it sit for several years, and then the world, as we know, changed quite a lot in that time, and they decided to sort of open it up. So he worked with some French screenwriters that sort of brought in, you know, that French perspective to both the story and the way it was filmed. And so I think the result is that it's really more of a drama, but with a delicate handling of some like really important themes that are very prescient, I guess.
The film just premiered at Cannes this past month. How are critics, Leah, and audiences responding to it ahead of its theatrical release?
I mean, it did get the standing ovation at Cannes, but many things did, we should say, including the Adam Driver, Marion Cotillard movie Annette, which is completely wackadoo, even though I love it. But, you know, this is Tom McCarthy. His last movie won Best Picture, you know, so a lot of people have been waiting to see. That was Spotlight, to see what he had next. And I think it's an old-fashioned sort of storytelling drama with movie stars in it, and we haven't had a lot of those in the last year and a half plus. And if we did, they've been on the bubble. They've been waiting to be released.
This is Damon's latest drama since 2019's Ford v Ferrari, but there is still plenty of drama and intensity here, just of a different kind. So Lauren, I'm wondering, how is he?
I think this is one of Matt Damon's best roles, actually. I think he completely, everything from like the way he moves to the way he talks to the way he dresses, and of course just all of his mannerisms. He's just, you buy that that's who he is, and he really just embodies, it's hard to put into words, but he has this way of like looking just at whatever, and there's this weariness there, this like world weariness in all of his looks and all of his mannerisms, and he's really just incredible. I mean, that has definitely not been overblown at all.
French actress Camille Cotin has appeared in Killing Eve. Oh, love that show so much. She's also going to appear opposite Lady Gaga and Al Pacino in Ridley Scott's House of Gucci, but she's pretty new to American audiences. Is this a performance that you think is kind of setting her up for international star status?
Well, not if you've watched Call Your Agent on Netflix.
Great show.
Which a lot of people got into, I think, just because it was on Netflix. But no, she's great. And she sort of, in some ways, she's also like the audience proxy for this, because she meets Matt Damon and she's sort of like, what are you doing here? You don't belong in Marseille. You don't belong in this city on this continent in this country, whatever. But she is sort of the patron saint of lost causes. Like one of her friends says, you're always getting into these causes that you can't, these things you can't fix. And so she sort of feels for him as a parent because she's a single mother with a little girl, and she kind of takes him on. And of course the case, like the Amanda Knox case, is pretty famous at that point. So she knows where he's, she knows what his story is a little bit. But yeah, she's this very sophisticated, beautiful, very French woman that he sort of gets entangled with while he's trying to free his daughter. So it gives it, that's the, sort of the central relationship in the movie outside of him and Abigail. And like Lauren said, Abigail is mostly in prison for it. So these are the two people that you're kind of seeing on screen most of the time.
And with that, that's it for our show. Thanks so much to my guests, Devan, Coggan, Lauren Huff, and Leah Greenblatt. We will see you all next week on What to Watch.